And welcome to the Spotlight with Sarah. We are in studio today to talk about a hot button issue voters are facing right now as they head to the polls. An election that has already drawn massive turnouts during the early voting period. Now, the issue I'm referring to today is public transportation in San Antonio. This is our third show that is focusing on the need to improve our public transit. The Via Transit Agency has been moving people around for over 40 years. But did you know they operate on about half as much money as other cities in Texas like Austin, Houston, and Dallas? As a result, we have fewer options for commuters. In the last year, Via recorded 36.1 million trips in San Antonio, and with the population expected to grow by 1.3 million by 2040, Via needs a plan that will help those who rely on public transportation. For over a year, Via has been working with the public, city, and county officials to determine what improvements need to take place that will benefit our community and make most sense financially. The plan is called Keep San Antonio Moving, and I have several guests joining me today who will be talking about what that plan is, who most desperately needs it, and answering the questions and concerns you have been sharing with us over the past two shows. Let us start with Athalie Malone. She is a Via Transit board member and a Via rider. So Athalie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So you are on the Via board. How important is it for you to be on the board representing the community?
I feel that as long as there's at least two or more members that are on a board for public transportation that use it as their main means of transportation, then the agency will work towards the community and what they need. It along the lines of still being within good practices of accounting and feasibility and what they can and cannot do, but at the same time keeping in mind that they're here to serve the public.
And so you've been a vocal advocate for the need for public transportation for the disabled for a very long time. Talk to us about how critical that need is.
It's critical in the point that, unfortunately, the disabled is the last segment of society that is overlooked, that is shoved aside. And in order to gain our independence, our most needed thing is transportation. As long as we have transportation, we can get to jobs, we can get to appointments, we can live our lives like how we should and live independently. Yes, every now and then we will need some help, but if we can live more independently, we will not have to rely on others.
Now, how do you use public transportation for yourself?
I basically use it for everything. I am involved in many activities. I'm a member of the Lions Club of the Lighthouse. I am a member of Disability Access Committee for the City of San Antonio, church, different other nonprofit organizations. I go back and forth to my appointments and my shopping, my socialization and everything. I just don't only use Via Transit, I also use the public transportation. I use the fixed routes. Some disabled cannot use fixed routes, but for those that can, I advocate that, yes, take it. It's a help factor also to get you faster where you need to go. You use Via Transit, and you can use both.
So how do you think public transit could better serve people with disabilities? How could it improve?
In terms of improving, it would be the Via Trans. Via Trans needs to be shuffled just a little bit. I understand there's a great need for the daycare center and sheltered workshops, but at the same time, they have to look at getting other disabled to work on time that are not in those environments. If they can put a little, not too much more vans on the road, but situated that those that have jobs, they can connect better with the public transit, the fixed routes, or even with Via Link.
Well, Athlete, we really appreciate your perspective on the need for improved public transportation in San Antonio. I want to thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have a lot more to talk about on the importance of passing this initiative. So we're going to continue on here on the Spotlight with Sarah. It is so important to head to the polls and vote for what is best for our city's growth and surviving what the pandemic has done to our economy. So don't go away. We'll be right back with more.
We are Vote Yes for Transit, a coalition of San Antonians from all walks of life, all sides of town, and both sides of the political aisle, who all agree maintaining and improving via transit services is essential to San Antonio. A yes vote keeps San Antonio moving by getting essential health care, food service, and other workers to their jobs, helps make us more economically competitive with other cities, and will connect more San Antonians to education, healthcare, and opportunity as our city recovers and reopens. No matter what side of town you live on, no matter where you work, no matter how you vote, and whether you ride via regularly, sometimes, or not at all, voting yes for transit is good for you and good for all of San Antonio.
And welcome back. We are talking public transportation today. I'm on the Vote Yes for Transit Committee, a coalition of San Antonians who are urging you to join us in voting yes to reallocate an existing sales tax to maintain VIA services. We are asking voters to approve that sales tax reallocation to VIA in 2026. It's not a new tax. It's a tax that's been used on other projects. But the fact is that VIA has been underfunded for decades, and that hurts the local economy. Joining us now is John Bailey with the Natural Resources Defense Council Action Fund. And thank you so much for joining us today, John.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
So what is the Defense Council, and why does this organization take an interest in public transportation?
Yeah. So the Natural Resources Defense Council, we call it NRDC, is a national, actually international, national and international environmental organization. Works on a variety of issues around public health, natural resource preservation, but I've always realized that transportation is actually one of the fastest growing sectors for greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution in general. And there's a lot of ways we can tackle that. We can make cleaner cars for sure, and electric vehicles. People talk about that often. But really what we have to do, and what we realized a long time ago, the data is clear, we have to deal with providing people with safe, affordable, and convenient options to not drive. And public transportation is a key part of that. And that's why we've been involved both nationally with public transportation and also helping state and local organizations or initiatives pass money so we can get more public transit actually on the ground.
So you're also part of the American Cities Climate Challenge.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How is that all tied together?
Sure. A lot of acronyms. American Cities Climate Challenge, that ACCC, is a project of actually Bloomberg Philanthropies. Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, I think realized early on that a lot of things can happen nationally and internationally. As we left the Paris Climate Accords, the United States, realize that cities are really where the action is. And we have to invest in cities and in mayors that are making real action to help combat global warming. A lot of things we can do on that, a lot of work on energy, a lot of work on buildings, but transportation, again, is the fastest growing sector for greenhouse gas emissions. And so the American Cities Climate Challenge was set up to work in 25 cities all around the country. San Antonio is one of those 25. Work on a variety of initiatives at the local level, working with city government, private businesses, nonprofit organizations. And one of those is making sure that we can invest in public transit, and that we can actually provide people with safe and convenient choices and resources to move around the city.
So this is all good for the environment. So that's what we were talking about here.
Yeah.
And so how does San Antonio look compared to other big cities across the country when it comes to public transportation?
Yeah. I think San Antonio is doing a lot of innovative work, even stuff that's not even happening in other cities. Like, for instance, one thing's VIA done, even VIA with the limited resources that it has something called Mobility on Demand, which is a really unique program. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's so... Exactly, VIA Link. So even if, a lot of places that are more spread out, like San Antonio, it's really expensive and hard to move buses up into places like that and those low-density neighborhoods. So what VIA Link is, it kind of acts like Uber or Lyft. You can pull out your phone, put stuff in, a van will come get you and take you right to a VIA transit center right away. So that's a way that much more affordable for the transit agency and much more convenient for the people using the system as well. So things like that are really innovative. San Antonio is sort of a newer, more Sunbelt city where you don't have the density you have in more East Coast cities. But I think projects like that make it work really well for a lot of San Antonio residents. But it just hasn't had the resources that places like Dallas, Austin, and Houston have that, as you know, can make use of that full cent of sales tax. San Antonio's only been able to use a half cent. So they want to do more things. There's lots of a political consensus to do that, but we have to get them the resources to do that.
And so why is transit an important investment now for San Antonio and other communities like San Antonio?
Yeah, now is the exact right time. I guess it was even the right time before the pandemic and the economic recession, but even more so now. I think as people have lost their salaries, lost their incomes, a lot of people can't really afford even one car, to say nothing of two cars. So again, providing people with the means to get the education they need to get other jobs, to get different jobs, to go to school, to get to their jobs that are sometimes spread out all over, now is really the time to make those decisions. The development community and the real estate community, those developers realize that people want to live a life that isn't having to drive everywhere to do everything. You're going to have to drive a lot of places, but not everywhere to do everything. And so you've really seen a lot of developers in the real estate community realize that more transit means more jobs and more income for them as well.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so how does public transportation do at the ballot box? Are these initiatives usually successful, or what have you seen?
Enormously successful. Even just in 2020, during the actual pandemic, you've had 34 ballot initiatives at the state and local level to fund transit. 32 have won. Even those two that didn't win were actually they were in January before the pandemic. So I think there's almost a conventional wisdom that, I don't know, more taxes, maybe not, maybe now's the right time. The public really gets it, and you've had a 94% success rate. And even before that, it's usually 85% of ballot initiatives on the ballot at the state and local level, red states, blue states, rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas. Transit wins because people want those choices to get around. They don't want to be stuck in a car all the time.
Right. And so what makes a good coalition? What makes these kinds of campaigns successful?
Yeah. Where you've seen them win, it's a coalition that is broad-based. It's not just the usual suspects. It includes the labor unions, social justice groups, chambers of commerce, just like we're doing right here in San Antonio. Have all the different chambers have supported. Most, if not all, of the labor unions, organizations representing the disabled community, faith-based organizations, in addition to lots of other just private business owners that realize this is an investment we have to make. We don't even have to raise taxes to do it. And it was a tax that was originally designed for transit. So when you have had a coalition that's really not very broad-based, is let's say just the business community or just the environmental community, those kind of go down. They're not successful. But when you have that broad-based coalition, that's when you can see success.
John Bailey, thank you so much for being with us today. A lot of really helpful information, and it's great to see what's happening in other parts of the country. So make us more aware of how successful this can be.
Sure. Thank you so much for doing this.
All right. He is with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We appreciate him being with us today. Now, the website to find out more about what's going on with public transportation is keepsamoving.com. Public transportation is a critical element for all cities that want to grow and have their communities prosper and thrive during this pandemic. As voters, many of you may still have a lot of questions about how this plan is going to play out and what exactly are we paying for. So coming up in our next segment, we're going to answer those questions for you. So don't go away. We'll be right back with more on the Spotlight with Sarah.
We are Vote Yes for Transit, a coalition of San Antonians from all walks of life, all sides of town, and both sides of the political aisle, who all agree maintaining and improving via transit services is essential to San Antonio. A yes vote keeps San Antonio moving by getting essential health care, food service, and other workers to their jobs, helps make us more economically competitive with other cities, and will connect more San Antonians to education, health care, and opportunity as our city recovers and reopens. No matter what side of town you live on, no matter where you work, no matter how you vote, and whether you ride via regularly, sometimes, or not at all, voting yes for transit is good for you and good for all of San Antonio.
And welcome back. Well, San Antonio is one of the fastest growing cities in America that can expect to add 1 million new people by 2040. So we need robust, efficient public transit to reduce congestion and improve commute times, but also to attract companies looking to relocate or expand here to San Antonio. But a lot of folks have doubts and concerns about what VIA is doing. So we're going to address those concerns right now. Joining me now is Bob Como. He is with the VIA Labor Department, and he's on the board, a representative. So Bob, thank you so much for being with us today. Can you tell us, what is your role as the labor representative on the VIA board?
Well, I was appointed by the city of San Antonio to the VIA board, and there's a specific representative of the working folks in San Antonio, not just the workers at VIA, but I represent all factions of the work. And so people who have concerns usually come to me, and we try to get those difficulties worked out.
And so how important is it for you to see this proposition pass?
This is so vital for San Antonio. If people just stop and think, a city the size of Austin is moving to San Antonio in the next 20 years. And they're bringing their cars and their pickups and their trailers and their boats. They're not bringing any roadway. And so the commute times are going to be increasing significantly. It's already bad now. I used to live downtown and would walk a block to catch the bus. Now I live near the Blossom Athletic Center. And so to see the traffic congestion on the north side, I was a frequent rider of the bus prior to the virus, and then about 6 months ago I was injured, and now I use Via Trans, which is a very vital service for the citizens who have handicap.
Right, you had a spinal cord injury.
Spinal cord injury. I'm on a walker right now. I've been on a wheelchair, and people don't realize that their life can change with just a stumble and a fall. And when that happened to me, all of a sudden I was paralyzed. I had to have surgery. I'm recovering from it, thank goodness. But thank goodness Via Trans is there to help me have the kind of independence that I need to be able to get where I need to go. And before the virus, there were about 4,000 people a day that were utilizing Via Trans. When the virus first hit, before the CARES Act passed, and before we had additional funding coming to San Antonio, we were looking at the possibility of having to make some significant cuts. And one of the cuts would have been to eliminate bus 648 that goes down Heimer Road near my house. And had they cut that bus, the policy is that you have to live within 3/4 of a mile of a bus route to be eligible for Via Trans. And so my neighborhood would have been without Via Trans service. And I think there are about 1,400 citizens of San Antonio would have lost service of Via Trans had we had to make those cuts. Thank goodness we didn't have to, but funding is always an issue, and San Antonio has been underfunded in our transit system historically ever since we were formed 40-something years ago.
Well, I'm glad they didn't make those cuts, and I'm also glad to know that you are recovering.
Yes, thank you.
It's a scary thing when your life just changes all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
So, a lot of folks might say that there are plenty of reasons to vote against this proposition, but you say, let's take a look at the pros and cons. Let's see what's good, what's bad about it, and let's answer some of the questions that the public has about this. One of the complaints from people is that they get tired of seeing empty buses all over the place, and why do we need to spend more money on empty buses? What do you say to that?
Well, I kind of thought the same thing when I lived downtown, and because I'd jump on a bus and there'd be plenty of people on it because it was close to downtown, and the buses would start out perhaps empty and pick up people along the route and be pretty full by the time they got downtown. But when I moved out there, I would get on a bus, and it looked like I was going to have the bus to myself, but the buses are wrapped with advertising because that helps bring a little bit more revenue into the VIA program. And so I'd get on a bus that I thought was empty, and there'd be 5 or 6 people on it. And then every time they stopped, they would pick up a few and sometimes drop off a few. But by the time it got to the North Star Transit Center, there's 25 people on it that would then get on other buses going to their destination. So, and the interesting thing is, as we're going down 281, our bus that supposedly is empty is passing all of these 9-passenger SUVs with one person in them. So, but the opportunity is there for people to ride, and we've got to build this system so that it is there because the people are coming. I lived in Houston in the 60s, and they said it was going to double in size in 20 years, and it didn't take 20 years, but they did not prepare properly for it. And that's why you see on the Katy Freeway in Houston 26 lanes wide.
Oh God, it's awful.
And,
Yeah.
and the traffic engineer says it takes longer now to get from point A to point B than it did before they started the construction. I don't see that in San Antonio's future.
Oh, gosh, I hope not.
We need to prepare.
Absolutely. So another thing that people say is that transit is dead. Why waste tax dollars on an outdated model?
Well, San Antonio is innovating. For example, there is the Via Link in the zip code 78247 that is basically a call on demand, and we have plans if funding is available for additional services like that. But it's designed to pick up people and bring them to a transit stop so that they can catch the rest of the bus route. And the cost is much more reasonable. It's the same cost as if you're riding the bus. So.
And so also some people say, VIA wouldn't even see this money until 2026. Why are we voting on this today?
Well, we wish that we would be able to have the money much sooner. The money, when it was passed by the legislature in the 1970s, was intended for transit. It was intended for transit, and we've used it for other things. And so the board was moving forward to have the election for the 1/8 cent sales tax. The city also was competing for the same dollars, and then the COVID hit, and the reality of people losing jobs permanently, and the necessity for assisting in taking care of that immediate need. And so the VIA board kind of took a back step. But it is very important that we pass this right now, because we need to be able to look at what our future funding is going to be. Many times the Department of Transportation has some grants or some funding that you've got to be able to come up with half of the money in order to expand your programs. And we need to know there's a reliable source of funding so that we can take advantage of federal funds that may become available.
Sooner.
Yeah.
And so some people are saying, what happened to the Connect SA plan?
The virus. I mean, all kinds of people's plans changed because that was such a significant impact. And, we would have loved to have been, many aspects of this plan will continue as if they were part of the VIA Reimagine. It's just that we have to do it on a smaller scale and take a little bit longer to get there.
So we also have some questions from our social media viewers that we've been collecting over the past couple of weeks. Nick Carlson, Nick CC623 on Instagram asks two things. Why hasn't San Antonio embraced light rail? And he also says there's practically no commute available to and from the eastern suburbs.
Okay. The VIA Reimagine plan was calling for bus rapid transit or advanced rapid transit. And that has a lot of the same aspects as light rail, but at a much less reduced cost. The second question is, why don't we expand into the eastern suburbs? We'd love to, but those cities have to opt into the program, and when they opt in, then they pay the sales tax. We're available to talk with those cities anytime because we would love to provide services to them.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so they need to pitch in.
Well, obviously.
Okay. All right, so we also have a comment on Facebook from Kirk Karpiensky, and he says these programs have had little to no public input, are rushed to the ballot to pad people's resumes, and they offer zero pandemic relief for years. What is your response?
Well, we've had a lot of community input. There have been town hall meetings almost every Wednesday night that discuss different aspects of this, where people are encouraged to call in. But even before putting it on the ballot, we had a number of town hall meetings, or we've reached out to riders with surveys. The fact that a huge number of people don't participate is not due to the fact. We've reached out, and the fact that they didn't participate is not a fault of VIA. The VIA staff has worked extremely hard trying to get the kind of input we need.
Yeah. Okay. Rodrigo Lara commented on Facebook. He says, simply have the city of San Antonio subsidize Uber. It's already friendlier, quicker, and more comfortable than calling a friend.
Well, we have the VIA Link, as I mentioned a while ago, that is far cheaper than the Uber and the Lyft, and so we are making innovations of that nature.
Yeah, because Uber, just to hire Uber would be a lot more expensive.
Absolutely. Now, if you're in the area that is currently served by the Via Link, for the cost of a bus fare, you can be picked up very near your location and taken to another location within that zone, or you can be taken to one of the bus stops that will then take you downtown or wherever you need to go for the same price of a bus fare.
Just $1.30, right?
For most people, yes.
Okay. And Lourdes Lulinga Trevino commented, she says, what about more Via Trans for special needs?
Well, I'm a person who uses Via Trans, so it's very near and dear to my heart. I didn't need it until I had my accident. And interesting, at the same time, one of my neighbors who had never ridden the bus fell and broke both of her ankles. And so now she rides Via Trans and is a very, very big supporter because she didn't know about it before, didn't need it before. But in an instant, your life can change. Yeah, it can. And we are constantly trying to upgrade and improve the services.
So Bob Como, thank you so much for being with us here today and answering and addressing all of these questions and concerns that people have had about Via transportation and what's going to happen with this proposal at the ballot.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, for those of you who are joining us, we just want to reiterate that Via provides a critical service where it's available. But with your approval, voter approval, more people will be able to take advantage of it. So if you vote yes for Prop A, you are going to help the transit service with an existing sales tax. There would be no increase in sales taxes. And the reality is that a lot of people have no other means of transportation to get to work, to appointments, people with disabilities, and students. We didn't get to talk about students today, but there's a lot of them. So just like and share the Vote for Transit media pages and check out the voteyesfortransit.com page. You can even make a donation there. Remember, this is about the future of San Antonio and connecting people with better mobility and opportunity. Head to the polls all the way to November 3rd. Remember to vote yes for Prop A. And thank you so much for watching The Spotlight with Sarah.